What's up, nerds? Welcome to Chapter 3, Season 2 of the Invaulted Podcast. I am your host, Squatting Dog, but my wife calls me Noodle. I wish she didn't, but she does. I know what you're thinking, and no, get your head out of the gutter. Today, we are joined by a good friend of mine. It's PM. You guys might know his music or his NFTs. What's up,
Okay,
PM?
dude. Just shilling NFTs to, teenagers out there, being a bad influence, apparently. So, look, I've
putting you on blast, bro.
I know, right? I've received a handful of flack for this. That is totally fine. I'm not shilling anything to anyone. I'm not going to make you buy anything.
I'm on his whitelist.
Exactly. No, you are. I just love the Web3 space. I'm a guy who falls in love with new things. It could be anything. Yeah. So this is the recent one that just kind of hooked me in. And
if you're listening to this podcast and you're deep in a pyramid scheme, just send him a DM. He'll be with you. No problem.
Yes, I'm at the top of the pyramid, suckers.
Today, PM, I'm really excited for today's conversation.
Yes.
I think we are talking about something that hasn't really been dissected on any podcast, but I think we're going to call this the slow death of Save the World, which has like a good ring to it. I think it's like, ooh, okay. But
Shakespeare,
yeah. But if we're gonna talk with somebody who has played Save the World, is a master of Save the World, and then watch Save the World kind of crumble and burn. Do you have any knowledge or understanding of Save the World?
No.
Okay, great.
Actually, okay, the only knowledge I have of Save the World is the TikToks of the scammer gets scammed, where people would like scam a scammer, which is ironic because I'm also in the NFT space. That is just really weird how this is going full circle. But yeah, that's the only thing that I know.
Okay, cool. So you're going to be the voice of the listener that's here from like the Battle Royale. What the heck is Save the World? You're going to give us that perspective. Sure. I myself know very little of Save the World, but every time there's a Battle Royale pack that shows up and is like, hey, if you buy this, you get a skin in Battle Royale, and also you get Save the World. I'm like, great, I'll play. Or I'll play for a pickaxe or whatever. And I know there's a lot of people that play for V-Bucks because Save the World has been like a V-Buck mining machine for a lot of people that don't have a lot of V-Bucks. So that is a huge income place for a lot of people as well. So that's our perspective. So if you're listening, that's me and PM. But I have a good friend that decided to say yes to come in on this conversation. He actually helped me start my Twitch channel and has been one of the most dedicated names in the Save the World space. So I'd like to introduce to all of you Isherwood.
Hey, howdy, hey.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for saying yes to this, almost on very short notice, too, which I appreciate.
Yeah, we were doing the pre-production thing, and he goes, by the way, I have a guest for this. And I'm like, fantastic.
But thank you for saying yes. How do you feel about being on the space, and have you ever been on a podcast before?
Oh, yeah, I have been on a one or two podcasts, actually Hearthstone related, which I find myself now doing a bit more. It's actually been a fair while since I've played some Save the World, but it's kind of you know what? It's a little bit like opening the vault of my mind, going back in time here, and remembering what I dedicated, I think about 2 years to. So yeah, it's I've been around some podcasts. I'm looking forward to talking about Save the World.
You get all teary-eyed going through the history of like, wow, this game meant to me, and it unraveled you a little bit. Well, I'm excited to have you on, man. Welcome to Invaulted. For today's topic, it's really nice to have an expert on Save the World here with us to help us more fully understand what has happened with that game and why there has been a steady decline. There's a dedicated fan base to Save the World, like super dedicated. People love the grind. People love being able to do that, be able to trade, play together. It seemed like it was a game that would have done really well if Battle Royale had come around. So I'm excited to kind of chat with you about what it was, what happened to it, and where is it now, or where are the remnants of Save the World, and how is it infiltrating Battle Royale, and where we're going for the future of the game. Really excited to have you on for that. You excited?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So could you, for those that are listening, they might not know who you are, especially in the Save the World space. But a lot, I would say, if you are in the Save the World space, you know who Isherwood is. But could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the game?
Yeah, so I'm sure I've been streaming. So I streamed Hearthstone for a couple of years, and you know what? As oftentimes happens with games, you just kind of you get burned out a little bit eventually.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of looking for other experiences, and I picked up a game that was just kind of coming out and being big, which was Fortnite Battle Royale. And I was playing that a little bit, and then one day I was just like, "Hey, let's this other mode, exists." So I took a dip into that, and I ended up streaming that for essentially, I think, a couple of years. Eventually, again, the game fatigue set in, and I found myself kind of tuck and tail and returning to Hearthstone, which I'm primarily doing now. So that's kind of like the very quick history of how I kind of jumped into to Fortnite.
Yeah.
It's just it's actually started out as a BR person, really early days, and basically I'm a guy that's just like not into the skins. This might be weird to say for like Fortnite, but like so it's just like it was basically the opportunity of like, oh, like I remember thinking, is this like, oh, this game's really cool. Like, I want to support this game. Like in my mind, like back then, I was just like, oh man, poor like Epic. Are they going to be able to be okay? Are they going to be able to continue?
You're gonna make it.
Like, are they going to make it? Right. So it's like, I'm going to support them. But like, for me, it's like, oh, if I can spend $15 and get a couple of skins, or if I can get $15 and get like a game,
Right.
like, oh, I'm going to get the game. So I got Save the World. And then I got like that was it for a while. Like I was like, okay, we're playing Save the World. Like it had a really nice hook to it. So yeah, it was just kind of it's the funniest thing though to be like when like early days of Fortnite BR, we're being like, oh man, I want to like these, they've really earned it, right? This is like simple, like not like they're not making billions of dollars yet.
Yeah. That's great. So so what's your Twitch channel if people want to like tune in and check you out?
Yeah.
Where are you at?
Twitch.tv, Isherwood, Isherwood. Like I haven't touched Fortnite in a long time, except for just a few minutes last night to kind of reactivate myself a little bit. But yeah, I'm always happy.
The game.
Yeah, like I'm always happy to like kind of take a stroll down memory lane, or try to help people if they've got like questions that I can answer. That's kind of a thing that I used to do when I was streaming Fortnite. I was kind of a little bit of a an analysis guy. Like whenever a new weapon came out, it was just like, okay, like what's the exact things that this weapon does? What's the hidden info behind it?
And I feel like for those listening, you guys might be thinking, well, Squatting, like, I mean, Save the World's now like tucked into creative and like kind of lost. What's the point of this conversation? And I feel like for me personally, this is a really important thing to pay attention to from Epic Games. Mostly because we watched something that Epic had outside of Paragon kind of teeter out and be transitioned into something else. And so my hope for this conversation is to see what can we pay attention to as like this case of Epic kind of like losing interest in it, so that we can look forward to other areas that Epic might bring out we right now we're in this issue. There's this like build versus no build going on right now, where it's bringing back a fan base, and there's like full communities that are coming back because of no build. The skill ceiling is different than with building, and so it's causing a lot of excitement. But if we can take information from Save the World and apply it to other areas, we'll learn a lot of, like maybe this isn't going to be sticking around forever, or maybe this is just like a LTM or whatever. So I'm excited to look at this, but I think in order to do this well, we need a little bit of history. So I prepared a little bit of information for those that are listening that might not know what Save the World is, but it came out as a co-op hybrid third-person shooter tower defense survival game. And it released 2 months before Fortnite Battle Royale did. There was originally 1 million players in its early access back in 2017, which is absolutely massive. This game had been promised quite a bit for a few years. So I think it was like an Unreal Engine change, and then they brought it to that, and then like made it available on PlayStation, Xbox, everywhere. So it was kind of like this really cool thing that everybody wanted to get their hands on. It did cost money to purchase it early on, and if you were a part of this early buy-in, you could get V-Bucks, which at the time wasn't really, nobody really knew what that was or how that was helpful. But also Fortnite Battle Royale was $20, which is interesting. Most people don't remember this. There was an initial cost. It was not free to play. And so we had people coming in for different things. We had PUBG, which was blowing up at the time, kind of taking over the Battle Royale space. Epic Games looked at that and was like, maybe we should apply what we have with Save the World and apply it to this Battle Royale. And so essentially what had happened was they created this offshoot. I remember going to like a TwitchCon back then, watching Myth play it and thinking to myself, wow, this is really cool. I got to play with Myth and Monster D-Face as like just a visitor. Like if we won, we would have got a headset. We never did, so they owe me a headset if you're listening. And it was
I don't think you're getting that anytime soon.
Come on, Myth. But yeah, so essentially like this massive player base got created. And when Battle Royale dropped to free to play, it exploded. It absolutely exploded. We had a game that people loved on the Save the World space, and then we had a massive exploding Battle Royale space, which at the time, Battle Royales were just doing really, really well in general. New concept of how to play a game. We were used to respawn, come back in, die again, respawn, come back in, die again. This one was like you get one shot. And so it kind of changed how people played. And then you combine that with the monetization of outfits and battle passes, it started to overshadow the income that was coming in for Save the World. And I think Epic Games had to make a decision of like where to invest their assets. And so what they did is they split their team into to a half. So they gave half of it to Save the World, and then another group of people worked on the Battle Royale. And so now it became this like teeter-totter of which one is more valuable based off of, from a business probably standpoint, finances. And so I'm curious, Isher, based off of all of that, what would you add to that? What would you say is that an accurate, like I'm not the Save the World expert, but is that an accurate display of what happened?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm definitely not sure, like exactly like what happens internally in Epic with the goings on. Like, I kind of got to feel that like at least at points there was like interaction between the teams, or maybe people were like working on both. It felt like they maybe had some long-term ideas of like like what Fortnite is now is kind of like this communal space of like a lot of different game modes, and I think they kind of had Save the World as an idea in that space. So there was things that like felt connected. I don't feel like they were entirely split off from each other development wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's kind of the general sense of things, where just like they had this mode, they turned they generated BR really, really quickly, and then that exploded in a way that, I mean, I think it's kind of a question like who wouldn't allocate
right.
assets to something that turned out to be the most successful game, maybe. Like it's it was that was kind of a a transition point for Save the World. It went from, I think they had spent years internally. I think it was maybe in development for like a decade overall.
Yeah,
and then
long time.
And then all of a sudden it just made it was the second thing now, right? Like it was just like, okay, like all of a sudden, like they turned BR over in just a couple of months, if I recall.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's like, okay, like this is now, it's the money wagon, right? Like this is what
Right.
we're hitching our horse to, and so it's just like, okay, we're gonna go a bit more with this. And yeah, I think within the community of Save the World, there there was kind of a little bit of resentment actually,
Mm,
to this ideology. The community, I think, never knew like if their game was not being what it could have been because of BR.
right.
And that's that's a hard question like to answer, with being on the outside of Epic. It's just like, oh, was did this development track just slow down or did it change because of BR? It's like, and I'm not sure if we can answer that, but they're definitely within the community. There did feel like there was a lot of resentment. Like there was a lot of kind of, for Save the World primary fans,
Yeah.
like a bit of resentment over like this, this mode that kind of came in and what they felt like was kind of took things from them.
Yeah. Could you give us like an example of like what it's like to be a content creator where your game is becoming less and less like what you want it to be or what you expect it to be? Because you were on the ground level, you were playing this game every day, you were creating content for it every day. You went out to Epic Games. They flew you to Epic Games, like on behalf of this. Like that's a big deal, you know. Um, what was it like for you as a content creator to watch this happen, and what were some interesting things that you noticed as it happened?
Um, so I think what it was is like kind of the core group of content creators on Twitch always had this like, for a long time there was this hope that it was just like, okay, BR came around and they've allocated resources, but they're always going to like create what feels like a more finished product. And it was a lot of waiting for that.
Hmm.
And I think it was like a thing where it's just like, oh, like we're at, it felt like we were always at like step 3 or 4 out of 5. And we never like, it was just like, oh, eventually they're going to take the next step and they're going to finish the storyline for this part of the game, right? Or they're going to do something else. And then one day, they essentially made a post saying like, hey, like we are now like like we're kind of done like with it. Like we're going to support the game still, but like we're not really going to be focusing on generating more. Like they definitely made like a statement like to say like develop like we are now like slowing down. Like if it was slow before,
Yeah.
like that this is like the at that point a lot of community, like a lot of content creators were already kind of like iffy or had left, and at that point I think that's when kind of a lot of other people left. A lot of people left the game when it was just kind of pretty clearly signaled. And I actually think this was a really good thing from Epic, like the
Yeah.
clarity of being like, hey,
Definitely.
like if you're expecting something like that's like this isn't going to happen, right? And
Yeah.
that's really good. Like I think a lot again, like I think there's kind of this bitterness that arises. Like it's like, oh, they're not doing something. I'd rather have that, right? I'd rather be like, hey, like this is it, right? Like this is
Hmm.
what we're going to do. We're going to release, essentially they released Adventures mode, and that's around the time when I quit the game. It was like a little bit of an end game grind fest.
Okay.
Um, and that was just like when I was like, okay, if this is it, I'm good. Thank you. I enjoyed my time with the game.
Yeah. So tell me about the culture then, because I mean, you still to this day can read comments or tweets or something of people still holding on to the wrong, right? That Epic has cost them of like, why did you kill our game? Like, like why didn't you ever finish it? Like, what is your viewpoint of that, and why is that so thick? Like what happened? What kind of community was created that can survive, a
so
post like that to where we are today?
so I think there's a thing where just like games as a whole has, it's easy to get frustrated in games, right? Like
Yeah.
all communities have at least a subsection where it's frustrated. I'll say this about Save the World. I think the reason why there's this like kind of resentment, right, across other modes or against Epic and thing, it's because Save the World at its core is such a cool, neat idea, right?
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
fun, right? And it's one of those things where I think people that played Save the World and really enjoyed it looked at it and said, this is such a great and novel idea, right? and it's an experience that you're not getting elsewhere. And that's the thing. It's not like, I feel like people can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go play a different, first person shooter. There's a gazillion of those, right? It's like Fortnite Save the World offered, I think, a fairly unique experience. There's a couple of like much smaller games that I think kind of touch on the same points, but this really nice balance of a combination of really three things: an ability hero, like essentially kind of like Overwatch, right? You've got these abilities that you can use. You've got kind of tower defense, but like in a different way, because you're building like tunnels more so than just a tower, right? The design is inherently different than the tower defense games you've had. And you've got a mix in of, just, hey, first person shooter, or third person shooter, sorry, on top of that. And it was just like this really nice, unique formula. And I think why people got so frustrated and still remain frustrated today is it feels like something got taken away, and you can't get Save the World in another game mode, really. And it's just like, I think that's why people were so bummed, because it was just like, oh, this is such a cool thing. And I think a lot of people really wanted to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, that's good. So Save the World was always like talked about going free to play.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was like the rhythm of the heart of a player that played Save the World.
As a content creator, that was the carrot, right? Like free to play games generally open up such a bigger audience, right? And the idea of like, oh, if it goes free to play, like it's going to bring in so many people, right? And it's just like people get experience this fun mode without like having to worry about you investing into it, and that was. That was kind of the carrot for the longest time, where it's just like, oh, that was so appealing. That I think is one of the reasons why a content creator stuck in so long as well.
I know for me personally, the reason why I gravitated towards Fortnite was because the BR was free.
Yep.
That was truly the only reason why. Like I have a hard stance where I do not pay for video games anymore. Like I made the mistake of buying Elden Ring because I played it for 6 hours and I was like, I'm never doing this again. And so I deleted it and everything. So I refused to pay for video games in 2022 and even in 2018 when I first got it.
Only skins, right?
Yeah, only a lot of skins. That's the difference. So so that is what hooked me initially. So I don't know why Save the World didn't really take the same approach.
Yeah, because I mean they did that. That was the weirdest thing to me, was like, if you're making all this income on BR by going free, why not go free on Save the World?
I have a little bit of an idea as to maybe why that didn't happen. So Save the World had like different levels of investment packages you could go into. I don't remember the price tag, but I think like one of the bigger ones you could get was like $200 for like you could get a ultra super deluxe version that had like certain weapons and heroes, right? And people on top of that were spending a lot of money on the llamas within the game, which was essentially just loot boxes, right? Like people were spending a lot of money on loot boxes. And I think I'm guessing that Epic was like, okay, we can make this free to play, but anytime we make this free to play, this is like canceling debt, right? Where it's like the people that have invested are going to be pissed, right? Like they are going to be mad, because I know people that this is crazy to me, put thousands of dollars into the game, and it was just like, which is entirely unnecessary, but hey, they did it, right?
Yeah.
So like
sounds like a shot at me.
Yeah, it's like those my skins, and I'm like, I pretty much own too many skins.
It's like, so how do you transition from how do you transition like the community that's already there to make them not feel like they've been cheated by investing early? There was some founders edition stuff, but I'm not sure if Epic really ever felt like they could make that transition to where it's like, oh, they're not going to lose their their core base
without that backlash.
Yeah, without that that being too frustrated of a response.
So would this be an equivalent if Epic was like, hey, you can now buy skins but for free? Would that be an equivalent to what you're saying for Save the World?
So the equivalent would be like all of a sudden like they put one of the rarest skins out, right? and they're just
battle
like
pass skin, like
or
a
it's
battle pass skin from like
like
season 2.
yeah, like a level
Yeah.
100 battle pass
Yeah.
skin. I probably have that, by the way. Like like a level 100 battle pass skin, and then they're just like, oh, it's half off or it's free, right? Like it's just like people are gonna feel like, wait, no, I earned that, right? Like or I was
Sure.
there, right? Like I put the time in, like I you know I
Yeah.
jumped through the hurdles. So yeah, I think that's the equivalent. That's like that's why my guess is like maybe that's part of why that transition never happened.
Okay, so then let's dive into like Epic's feedback or slash communication with its community.
Mhm.
How do you feel like Epic did in sharing where Save the World was going, where it is, and what's happening along the way of those 2 years plus that you've played the game?
Um, I think it's kind of hard. I've kind of hard to say. I think maybe they didn't share the plan because I think Save the World's plan changed so much. Like they I think one of the kind of I'm not trying to think of a better phrase, but like kind of a internal sickness of Save the World was that over the years I think the game the idea, the vision of the game changed so much that, 3 years, like, 3 years prior, they couldn't tell you what what it was going to be, like the long-term plan,
Right.
because it in a good way started responding to player feedback when players were like, oh, we want more of this or more of that. But also like you get less of a honed, vision, and you get less of, I think, a, cleaner final product there. Communication was I think it was kind of okayish for a game. Like I've played a couple different modes. Like I seem to recall like there was um, kind of generally reasonable info and like patch notes sort of stuff. There was a lot of hidden information in the game, but that's kind of the nature of Save the World.
Yeah.
There were so many like like little intricacies of like like what would like the crit damage modifiers of weapons, or like how the traps exactly worked in unison with others, which was kind of fun on the discovery part. So like not everything was spelled out, but I think that's fine. But yeah, I think communication was um, you know generally okay. I think the community managers were always excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of get the feeling that Save the World changed so much, partially because like there were so many factors that like caused it to change. BR just being one of them, right? And BR got introduced, so they wanted to develop BR alongside and kind of keep these games like within the same framework. They never got separated. Like they for the longest time, like there wasn't a separate category on Twitch, although the games are like distinctly different.
Yeah.
Eventually they got like a little tag on Twitch, but yeah, the modes, there was other factors as well, and it really felt like you could see the game kind of like changing over time, which was partially good but partially bad, because I think why the struggle of like why the game never really feels completely finished is they didn't have like a finish line. It feels like you'll hear people
Sure.
talk about the Twine Peaks storyline. Like it's like, oh, when's that happening? That was an assumption for a long time. And it's just like, nope, it's not.
Interesting. I see. So this is this is where like I can relate, right? Let's just say we're at the peak of the Marvel season of Fortnite, Battle Pass, and then just the next month they're like, "Sorry, we have other plans." I would be like, excuse me? Like, what the heck? Like, that would be really hard for me. I've invested, quote unquote, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I've invested a lot of money, in this game. And then if they were to do that, I feel like I'd be like, what? Like, this is so dumb. But it makes sense when there is something else happening. Like, like it's kind of like Save the World was the little brother of the very successful brother. And everybody else is looking at him and he's like in the news tabs, and the little brother's just like, I just like playing with my toys, like he's off on the side. I feel like I would have a hard time navigating that switch up. And so in my brain, I'm thinking to like myself, I feel like the PR person, the people that give feedback or patch notes or whatever, is a vital ingredient to the pulse of a game. Like to know what's going on with it, to set expectations of gamers onto something or not, right? Like, and I feel like Save the World did it, at least from what I could gather, it seemed like they had more participation in that at the beginning. Maybe because it was smaller team. You know, maybe that's the reason. But I still think, and as a critique I have as a consumer of Epic Games products, is it would be really nice if there was a face or a voice of this is what's happening. This is where we're going. Here's some patch notes. Here's some stuff that you can hold on to. Because I feel like there is a similar feeling in the water of BR of like what's going to happen. Yeah. What are they going to do? What is going to like why like if we were to rewind to last season, they brought Spider-Man in and I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing in the world. This is the best movement I've ever seen. And I was fearful of the next season because I was like, what happens when you take out the best mobility in the game? You know, what's going to happen? So I think like there's a charm to that people look forward to of like what could come. But I think along the way, a lot of players, including Save the World, including BR, are looking for steady communication from Epic Games. I'm curious of why that is not a priority. And maybe PM, maybe Isher, you guys could speak to this, but I'm just so confused of why that would not be something that like Epic is like, we should do this, because people's expectations seem like the things that are most important to participate in. Because if your expectations are loftily or like out of this world, you could at least reel people in a little. What are your thoughts?
I think the problem is that everybody wants to think themselves as the level-headed, right? Like I consider myself like, you know, that the level-headed person. I think a big problem in games as a whole is when somebody steps out and it's like, okay, we're gonna have you be the voice, right? You have, you know, the level-headed people absolutely drowned out by vitriol, right? By just anger. And like I think it's hard for I think a big problem is like how do developers like balance out the mixture of trolls and anger as feedback from everything else. And I think that was made like maybe that's why Epic kind of like got a little bit more tight-lipped over time. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just like, you know, maybe it's like, you know, trade secrets. They want to like leak stuff and they want, you know, stuff along those lines. But yeah, I think a big huge problem is like, if you give people information, then they have specifics to be angry about.
Sure.
I think information is wonderful. Like, just give me info. I'll gobble it up. And just like, I want like, give me numbers, give me information. I'm I'm generally happy with that. But yeah, like when you say like, oh, we're going to do this, then you've got like focus, right? Where it's just like all of a sudden everybody's attention is now honed in on this one thing. And I think that's difficult, right? Like I get sympathy for developers across the board here, where it's just like how do you get feedback? Because if you go if you go to anything, right, where it's just like somebody will just post something fun about Fortnite, and then it'll be just comments after like, oh, bring back this, like this sucks, right? And it's just like, this isn't the context of that, right? Yeah. Like there's so much, you know, part of it is just trolling, part of it is sincere, and it's just like, how do you figure out like what parts of the community to serve, and also like if you even want to like ignore that part of the community, it's like how do you figure out which parts of feedback are that? I think that's the difficult part.
Yeah, that's good. PM, what are your thoughts if we had more communication from Epic Games?
I mean, I think that's fair. I remember when, was it Chapter 2, kind of mid-seasons, when they kind of cut the, what was it, the the weekly updates to tell you what was going on.
Notes.
The patch notes. That's what they are. So they cut the patch notes from content creators and people who were like actually invested in it and wanted to see it, and it was a huge hit against them because everyone was like, I have no idea what's going on. I need this for my stream, my content creation, and everyone was just kind of learning it. I don't know how much of that is due to maybe COVID kind of made it tough for people to communicate things and internally, but I think that was a huge mistake, and then they brought it back eventually, but I always think more communication is good. And you guys mentioned the Twitter trolls. It's dopamine at the end of the day. These kids have notifications on a Fortnite's post just to be the first to post something and to get the most likes. I mean, it's similar across NBA Twitter, a whole other slew of Twitters that you see people have. It's the same accounts that do it within 10 seconds. And they always post the same thing because they know it'll get them 1,000 likes immediately, and that's the dopamine hit they need for that hour. And then they'll do it again next hour, and then the hour after that. So I think the trolling is just kind of this culture of social media. But I think their honest communication as far as the patch notes goes, like, needs to be permanent. It cannot go away.
My I think maybe where they've pivoted based off of what you guys were both saying, maybe where they're trying to get their information are the in-game surveys that they just trickle out randomly, where you're like, how do you feel about this chicken? I'm like, is the chicken too powerful? Yes, the chicken is too powerful, Epic Games. It's too powerful.
I got one that was like, how do you feel about the harpoon gun? Is it too powerful? Is it just right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's good. Like, what? It doesn't 200 headshot people. Like, what do you want me to say?
I've always disliked those sort of surveys where it's just like rate building on 1 to 5, and you're just like, that means nothing.
That's the wrong question.
Like, it's just like, what you need to do is, and like, this is the hard thing. It's like, you can try to get like a bunch of people to answer a question like that and get something out of it, but you need to talk to people. Like, you need to if you want to talk about, like, you can't get that on a number, right? Like, whatever it is, it's like, oh, building is complex. You know what? It's like, oh, there could be things that you like about it and dislike about it. Is that
at the
3?
Same time? Yeah.
Right? Like, is that a 4? Like, and it's just like, what does that mean? That is like, that's such a, like, that getting feedback that way is, if they get value out of it, great.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't, right? Like, I wouldn't know what to do with that. Like, it almost feels like that sort of like, that gets put out there just as kind of like, hey, another dopamine thing. It's like, people like, oh, I'm feeling listened to because like I'm getting like a random stuff. Like, what purpose does, responding to something like that feel? It's like, dude, it's like, it's kind of a.
Go ahead.
I'll just say real quick, if anyone at Epic is listening to this and does the feedback department, we have a platform for you to use here on the Unvaulted Fortnite podcast. You can reach out to us and we'll answer the questions for you from the community. So go ahead and let us know.
Absolutely. We'd love to have an Epic employee on. That's kind of our hope one of these days. Donald said maybe. So we're still waiting on that response, Donald.
That's the tease of the century right there.
Okay. So I think this conversation's great. Like, I think the whole idea of like setting people's expectations, I think is crucial to a healthy game, because you can help let people know the direction it's going. And I think for you guys from Save the World, when you guys got the, hey, we're not doing this anymore, that allowed a lot of you to go, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to transition now. Because like, if you didn't, you'd be strung along this thing. Like, if Epic was like, hey, everybody, I know you bought a lot of V-Bucks. That's going to no longer be a thing. Like, that would be chaos. But they were like, if you want, we have this other, like, it would be helpful, even though it would be painful, it would be helpful to be able to go to understand and like deal with those emotions and hopefully not be super angry on Twitter. Well, but I do think that that's a difficult thing to balance. Like, I don't know the perfect formula here.
Something that I would like to bring up is like, I was able to go on it and kind of move on, but there is this there's this weird sunk cost fallacy in games, whether it's what like well, no matter like almost no matter what game, right? Where people get into this point where a lot of people choose particular games to grind out, right? They're putting hundreds of hours into, and that's their game.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point, it's like when they get tired of that game, it feels like if I stop playing this, all my hours were wasted, right?
Right. Sure.
See this in Save the World. This can happen even in BR, and it's just like I think people really should have this, philosophy of like, hey, if I had fun for 100 hours, right, and I'm going to go do something else, like try to find something where you had that initial fun. But I feel like there's this it's just a sunk cost thing where you're just like, oh, like I played this game for 2 years, I can't quit now. It's like, oh, I put money, like, I spent, money on this game, I can't quit now. And it's like, what happens is when people get attached to that, they get angry, right? Like over things that aren't going their way, instead of trying to find a experience that, does. I sympathize, because I say like Save the World is an experience that's so hard to replicate. But at the end of the day, there's other fun games. There's other fun things to do. If you find yourself like, worn out on something, try to find a new happy experience. That's okay.
Like going outside. Like I've heard it's great. Gamers, I get it. Trust me, there's sun.
It's
yeah, there is.
Wow. My skin killer says differently.
I know, right? Me too.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened to Save the World. Like, where is it? Did it just go onto the cloud, which nobody knows where that is? But like, where did the team that was working on it? Like, if you're listening to this, Save the World is drastically different than the BR experience in what you can do, what you can accomplish, what you can grind, what you can interact with, and then touch and oh wow, oh cool. So like, there is tons of stuff you can do that are different. Now, where did all of that go? Was it all of that development for naught? Or are we seeing that slowly in the BR? Isher, PM, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I have a crazy theory.
Love crazy theories.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's gone.
Save the World 2 confirmed on the Unvaulted podcast.
I know, right? No. I think the mechanics of Save the World, and actually, Isher, you kind of touched on this. This is going to get really annoying for some people, and I apologize ahead of time. But the whole concept of the metaverse is something that is a very hot topic for a lot of people. You can hate it, you can love it, you can be confused about it. That's totally your opinion and fine. But Tim Sweeney, I think is his name, right? He's the developer for Epic Games. He's come out and talked about how Epic is kind of pushing towards the metaverse. Epic Games just got a bunch of funding for it. I think they got like $2 billion for that kind of thing. And so now I'm kind of piecing together, what if their quote unquote metaverse is similar to a Save the World type of interface? So not necessarily the game, but like the assets that are involved in it, and just kind of how the game functions. Again, I haven't played it, so I wouldn't know too much. But I just almost wonder if that's something they're thinking about, is making that kind of integrated into their quote unquote metaverse.
Yeah. I think the most humiliating thing that Save the World users can feel is where it used to be Save the World, Battle Royale, creative, equals squares on the board, to a very small thing that you can find inside of the creative tab. Mm-hmm. This is the most telling to me of resources used, where you have tools in creative that I think that team has been translating to be tools for creative.
Yeah, and that's what I mean as far as the metaverse is like those tools that were in that game mode are now being integrated into something that is much bigger. So it might not necessarily be Save the World, but it could be the same functionality.
Right. If you give those tools that everybody loved in Save the World, you gave people the ability to create a Save the World experience in creative with unlimited potential, and I feel like that could be Save the World too, if somebody wanted to create it. What are your thoughts, Isher?
there was a cool thing. There was this there was something in Save the World called storm shields, which kind of acted as these bases for you, these permanent missions where the husks would come in and attack it, and you'd defend it. You defend these storm shields. What was really cool about this is you could actually build permanent structures. They could be damaged, but like if you built it on your storm shield and it didn't get destroyed during attack or something, that would stick there. And a lot of people, took the opportunity before creative was around to like do creative stuff, right? They were building all these structures. They're making parkour, challenges. They were baking big llamas, right? Like they're doing all this stuff, and it was it's kind of a cool thing. I could see that as kind of like kind of in the past we've had kind of within games. I think Sony's tried this stuff before where like everybody has like their little home, right? Where it just like, you can show it off. It can be a social space. You can have that. And Storm Shields kind of work like that in Save the World. That'd be cool for creative, where you just like you have your thing that you can always return to and tweak it a little bit.
It's big in Minecraft too, right? Like
yeah,
you have your own world.
Yeah, right. And I think that could be an interesting thing. There's some technical limitations because there was like build limits because of server overload and stuff like that. But yeah, like stuff like that from Save the World. In some senses are already translated, right? Because like creative, you can kind of build anything. But yeah, it might be cool to have like a little home block for each player that they can just have their little permanent thing. Or there's like a loading area, like, well, last time I played there was like a loading area for creative, right, where there's like you can jump into the different things. Like maybe like the person hosting, that could be their their little block like in that area, and they can just build and work on stuff. There's cool ideas to transfer over.
To piggyback off that, I've had this really weird theory for the longest time that Fortnite is going to take creative and make it an open world kind of game, where instead of loading into a lobby, you load into like a Minecraft or load into an open world thing like a World of Warcraft, where like you load into with a bunch of other people and they have their built structures, or you can like go into their creative world. Or like, it's just, I think they're going to be the first to make this like open world experience really cool. And I just wonder if maybe this, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Save the World has like a trading mechanic, correct? Where you can like trade guns for other guns and like VR or something like that.
This is jumping into one of I think a big sickness within Save the World. This is something I've got some opinions on. Trading has always been bad for Save the World. I'll big asterisk here. This is an opinion of me. Trading was never like implemented in a good way. And what happened was, if trading could have been good, it really did a lot of bad things for the game. Duplication of items was rampant. So trading stuff, all you were doing was probably kind of taking away the moral problem of duplicating stuff yourself. Because when somebody came in, it would be like, oh, I'll give you 400 of this ultra rare item for this. It's just like the translations never made sense, right? It's like, oh no, this is just like way, way, way more worth it. The only way that would happen is if the items were duplicated. Another big problem, and the community, I think, really wanted this for a long time, is they never made a safe implementation for trading, and it was always an at your risk thing. So like to trade, you needed to drop an item and then the other player dropped an item. So this is where you get the whole scammer thing coming from, where it's just like you drop an item, they pick it up and leave, and then, oh, whoops. And I told people, just never trade. And, people continue to do it, and then they'd lose stuff, and then they'd be upset because they decided to be, that way. Trading could have been a bit better if they implemented like a trade, like a UI for it, like Rocket League does, right? That was always my go-to comparison, where it's just like, hey, like this is in the system, you both click yes, and like the things get transferred. It was trading as an example of one of those things where it's just like, that never got hashed out. It never got finished. That is a core thing that I think is absolutely broken within Save the World to the day. And I don't think the game really feels finished without either. And here's a lot of people's solution: just remove trading. I think it made the game a worse experience. It created a community where people would go into a mission. 2 people would be trying to do the mission, defend, and other 2 people would be trading, like actively taking up space that other active players could be, because they're doing like trade box stuff. Bad for the game. That's my rant.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally fair. Like, I wonder if Epic is willing to do a solution for that if they implement it into a bigger creative thing, because obviously they would have to.
It got talked about enough. If they were going to solve that for Save the World, I would imagine it would have happened a long time. I think it's one of those things where just like that feedback definitely got to them, and it was just like, nope, it's just never going to happen, right? And it's just like, okay.
And that's why I think like Save the World was a necessary growth bump for Epic. I think they learned a lot from it feels like an experiment in some ways. It almost feels like the sandbox experience starter pack, where when Creative 2 comes out, all these tools and desires like of what could a good experience and community be on a game that was created by Epic Games. What if you give that power to players, to where you Isher could create Save the World 2, and people can play it and people can experience it, and you have the tools to tailor their experience to one that doesn't have trading in it or does have trading in it. Like, you have that power. If Epic can solve the issue of space, like how much space you can have in a creative match and a creative game, and they keep pouring out tools that help make people's maps more impactful and more exciting, and there's an ease to joining each other's experiences, like I feel like that I just see so much overlap in my brain, like between what happened with Save the World to where it's going and how it's being established. I mean, what's crazy is in the Halloween season of the BR, we had a Storm King battle, like literally. And they just took that asset and shoved it in the BR. We had zombies show up on the map. Like,
excuse me, husks. They're not zombies.
My bad. But yeah, so I think like there's tons of overlap. Like, we're just seeing, I think what AIs do now is ridiculous and crazy. And I think the quest tab for AIs that's all Save the World stuff. Like, they're just bringing it in and revamping it and applying it to a more popularized game so that so it can feel fresh and exciting and whatnot. It's very interesting.
Before we get way too far away from it, I do want to jump back really quickly to something you said earlier. You was basically asking, like, where's Save the World? And so here's my experience, right? I haven't played Save the World in a long time. Yesterday, I went back into Fortnite after a very long time, being away. And that was my question. Like, I looked at it and I was just like, I'm not going to go to YouTube until I give this a fair chance. I spent a couple of minutes. I couldn't figure out how to play Save the World.
Wow.
So did they change so much of it that it just was confusing?
No, I didn't know where to find it.
Right.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Because they got rid of that 3 screen.
Right. And I was just like, where do I go? Eventually, I popped open YouTube. And I was like, okay, that's okay. But so I guess this goes into another thing. So my experience with, like, when I opened up Save the World, I was just like, I gotta play. There's a mode in Save the World called Dungeons that's absolutely amazing. It's like my favorite mode, and I really enjoyed it. And they had it there. It used to be a limited time thing. I'm not sure if it still is, but I played one round of it, and then something that like was really distinct to me. It's like I looked at the game and I was like, I was an in-game player, but it's effectively like a year and a half since I've played, and I came back and I looked at it. It's like, it doesn't feel like there's anything for me to do. A year and a half gone from a game, right? And like, there wasn't content that like popped out to me that was just like, oh, I should go do this. Like, this looks like it would be fun or new, and it's just like, oh, that's such a, to me, that's I think that kind of goes back to like when they said like, hey, we're not doing much with this game anymore. No surprise. But like a year, like that kind of says like that's where Save the World is, right? A year and a half, and I came back and I was like, oh, okay.
And I think the reality is there's probably someone out there, probably listening to this podcast right now, who has been playing for that year and a half, still thinking and waiting and hoping that something else is going to change.
And here's the thing: if you're playing for that year and a half and you're still enjoying the game, keep on enjoying that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
Enjoy your experiences, but like, I was there for a while. It's like I was hoping that they were going to do stuff or add things. When I remember when the Storm King came out, and that was like such a cool thing. And the thought after the Storm King came out, kind of the thing was like, oh, what's the next boss going to be? Right?
Yeah,
like, is there going to be the funny, like people were like, oh, there's going to be a Storm Queen now, right? And like there was like players would bounce back like, oh, what's the cool next big boss? And we had this idea of like, oh, this game's going to be like continuously like add like bosses over time and have like cool, like, cool interactions. And it's just like, oh no, that stopped. It's like, and eventually, some of us, got our expectations in check or, moved on. But yeah, there's always going to be people that like keep on playing and kind of like, oh, it's going to happen. And it's just like, my advice for, any game in which you're playing in which you feel like you're just waiting for the next thing. You don't have to grind that game every day. You can put it down and then come back when they add that next thing, when they add that next fun thing. That's fine.
I will say real quick, you touched on it, but I do need to bring it back up. The user experience to find a game mode right now is the worst thing on the planet.
Okay, it's not just save the world then.
No, it is. It takes me 15 minutes just to find normal trios.
Yeah, sure.
And I have to scroll through 17 layers of maps I would never go to begin with.
So
but you got to realize that that's their push, right?
Like, I get it.
They are pushing creative.
I totally get it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do it.
Right, totally.
And I think that's something they need to realize is like, yes, they're trying to push people into these creative routes and they're trying to push people into these new game modes, but the core base of the people that play their game is always going to be the simple battle royale modes. You can say like the creative gunfight games and stuff like that, but it's these solos, duos, trios, and squads. Whether it's builds or no builds, that's what people want to play when they log on. They don't want to sit there and play a map that runs them through a maze for 5 minutes. They want to simply go play a solo, play a duo with their friends, and be good.
Well, I mean, to counter your point, I wonder if that is shifting. Mostly because, to Isher's point, playing games should be fun.
Yes.
And if you're playing solos, duos, squads with your friends and getting destroyed, frustrated, annoyed by being outside of your skill-based matchmaking, it's going to not be as fun. And I think that might be what they thought would be fun, was like, well, here's a dozen other experiences that you can have fun in, which may or may not be true, but it's not the same as what you're saying. Not the same. And so I think like one of the problems is, I would say, is like, if that is true, if Fortnite has all of this information, they have to, right? They have to know which clicks are getting the most people there, like which LTMs just work really well. I feel like the fun aspect is still going to be the one that reigns. Like that's going to be the one that brings the most people to whatever it is.
Going back to your point earlier about like, giving players more and more tools to create, right? Like if you essentially, like the closer and closer you get to just giving players like kind of like dev tools, right? To make all these things. When that happens, you essentially need a natural filter, because 98% of the things that get generated are going to be bad.
Yeah.
Like 100%. People are going to try and it's going to be bad. That's fine. 2%, right, is going to be really good. And what you need is a way of filtering through. And it feels like maybe this is like, it's like they're trying to figure out a user interface in which like, okay, like the things that do get the most clicks, like that allows it to rise to the top and other stuff gets naturally buried. Again, I think there's a problem. It's like if you have a mode that's doesn't happen to be one of your favorites, that is like, that needs to be like accessible cleanly. But yeah, like I think having a way for them to like filter out the the stuff that's just not going to be, interesting is going to be important.
A big bummer, and I think we'll have to get a creative person on here that's their job. I think a lot of people in creative are having a real hard time because of that.
Yeah.
If you go in there right now, like the most played game is like literally this small little cruise ship. I think and you're on two different sides. You can have any gun and cannons and unlock little doors off to the side, but like it's just the worst map. It is not aesthetically pleasing. It makes no sense why it's on the top, but I think it is because somehow there was a way to maybe it had an initial spike, but then there's something weird that's maintaining it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's players. And yet it has been there forever. And every time I see it, I'm like, it just gives me a bad taste of creative right away, just like that. And so then you have somebody who spends the rest of their whole life creating a world for people to experience something really fun to play with their friends, and it doesn't get seen at all. It feels really, really tough to that. And I would love to maybe get a voice from somebody who knows that well.
Can I shout out like a random person that used to do creative stuff? I'm not even sure if they're doing Fortnite anymore, but there's a person, Ginger J. They even had like when Fortnite had that block that was like, I think they had something there. They did a ton of cool stuff, and it was just like, man, the effort that went in, and it's like that'd be such a bummer, like for like to see something like this, because they essentially, I remember they made like a Toy Story essentially thing, where it's just like you felt like a toy in this room, where it's just cool. Oh, this is like such a cool novel idea. And I'm like, people are doing that, and if that stuff is like getting buried and not getting recognized, that's got to be so frustrating to like know that like, oh, like what I'm seeing, like, oh, what I'm doing is definitely better, like just definitively better than what I'm like, than what's on the front page. But that's a that's a hurdle, right? Like you can kind of like figure out like how it happens, right? Like something gets an initial amount of clicks, and then that just sustains it, because every time somebody logs in, it's like, oh, what's this? It must be good. So they click it, and they might never do it again, but they've clicked it once, and that just kind of like naturally sustains itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting. So I think like to kind of like teeter out this conversation, Isher, what would you say are the initial signs of lack of dev support to a game? Like, what have you seen to where you can pay attention and be like, oh, okay, this, like how they've been doing this, and this makes me believe that this game is going to have a hard time, because I do think we're dealing with the same people, just a way more massive staff. Like what are things that we could look out for in the BR space, or even just like, the creative space, of like maybe Epic is paying less attention to it? What have you noticed from your experience?
I think with Save the World, what I kind of learned was trust your gut. Right? Like if you see a change occur and you're like, oh, is this what they're going to like, is this what they're going to do? Is this like the trend that's going to happen? It's like there's a decent chance that your initial vibe on something is right. Like for Save the World, for a long time, it was just like, wow, things are really going slow. And there was this hope that's like, oh, maybe they will do something, magnificent at some point. And like that's going to, like wrap things up and culminate nicely. But yeah, like if you find yourself in any game mode where it's just like, oh, things feel different now, or they feel stagnant, trust that feeling there. And honestly, like the nice thing about games, like how they're often made now, where they have this potential for change, is you can come back when that thing happens, right?
Sure.
It's like, that's kind of like, I kind of want to like be like, it's a bummer when things change for what you perceive to be the worst, but like I kind of like, I don't know, I kind of want to come in with like a little happy message to this, to be like, there's other fun things out there that you can like, do. And like with the nice thing with Fortnite is, I think there's fun within Fortnite. Like you don't have to leave Fortnite entirely. Like you can try out creative stuff. You can try out BR. Now you can try out, no builds, our builds, right?
Yeah.
like there's a lot of variation there, but I think it's one of those things where it's like if you have a favored mode and you feel like it's getting less attention, it's like maybe have an exit strategy. Like I'm not sure how, like, as very few individuals have the power to implement change, right? So it's, I don't know, maybe it's too defeatist, but I think it's just like, hey, if things start feeling less fun, like, find where they are fun, or just like, keep on having fun, but like, if things keep on going, just have kind of a mental plan for that.
Yeah. I also think like this whole conversation is cool because I feel like there's just so many people, and PM, you could probably speak to this too. I have so many friends who have left the game, and then they hear about something that Epic is doing now that sparks their interest again, and they come back, and it's fun. It's interesting because I think how they're doing like season passes and like seasons is a really cool thing, because I feel like I'm experiencing a lot of people burning out left and right because of their skill is different than the person they're playing against. And so no builds brought this like refresher, I think, for some people of like, oh, building is taken out entirely. I don't have to worry about at least one piece of this battle. And my next thought like is, well, what happens when that becomes even more try hard, right? Like what are you going to remove next? Like you can't shoot. Like I feel like how much can you strip a game until it isn't Fortnite anymore?
It's only spike traps, just spike traps.
So I like, there's a part of me that's like, it's interesting. It's interesting that this is kind of a test. It feels like, it really does feel like a test season of like, here's both options, one you like, one you don't, but how long is that the no build thing going to stay if it stays? Is this just a fleeting thing to get people to get skill-based matchmaking fixed so that people can come back and be like, oh wow, now I can actually build and do good, like this is fun again?
Yeah.
Or I'm curious of all of that.
No, I mean, I agree with you on that point that eventually no builds is going to get sweaty to the point where people are going to complain about it. Like that's just the ebb and flow of it. People will evolve with that new meta and become so dominant that it's going to make everyone else very upset about it. Like that's just the nature of the game. Like you look at early Fortnite, no one could really build. Now you look at it now and it's like you got kids creating Taj Mahals in 15 seconds. And it's like, I personally love the fact that I can constantly try to get better with that aspect of it. And it, like I brought this up in the pod before, but it reminds me a lot of basketball. Like I played basketball my whole life. I played it collegiately in high school, AAU, traveling, everything. And what I really love about it was when I'd lose, I would still want to play to win. And so I didn't really fall in love with the winning part of it. I fell in love with losing and trying to get better with it.
Yeah.
And so when I fell in love with Fortnite was when I just kept losing. And I was like, no. Like I need to get better at this game. I need to get a PC. I need to get the keyboard. I need to turn it 90 degrees. I need to have my DPI at 6,000. Like I need to do this. And eventually what'll happen is someone who is playing this no build mode is going to be like, no, I need to get better at it. I need to learn how to slide, cancel, jump over this thing to 200 pump you kind of thing. And then that's just going to upset the casual player because that casual player doesn't want to learn to get better. And that's not a shot at them. They just don't want to put that time into it.
Yeah.
Or they can't.
Or they can't. True. Yeah.
But
people have jobs.
They're just a dad that's like, hey, I have 4 kids and I'm just doing this to escape and I'm still getting destroyed by the same age of my child.
Yeah.
Like that's a bummer.
A point to that, like I really love that. Like it's one of those, it kind of like touches on what I think is a really good philosophy of like, when you play games, especially competitive games, like I think the best thing to do is compete against your own level, compete against yourself. Like you're going to have a much more satisfying journey, I think, like when you just like, instead of like if you try to win every game, you're not going to win every game, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, but you can try to do better than what you did before, right? Like you can always like work on improvement. That's
I would get bored if I won every game.
Totally.
Yeah,
personally, I would get like you've seen a ton of competitive people who just win these 20 kill arena games, and they're like, yeah, like, all right, ready up for the next one. And it's like, that sounds terrible. It sounds horrible.
This touches into one of the big problems of like what went wrong in Save the World. Save the World essentially got solved. There was missions that required, I think it was 2 traps, right? You placed 2 traps at the start of the mission, and then you could stand AFK and you were done.
Wow.
And what happens was this divided the community into people that kind of they knew that you could do that, but they're like, that's not even a game anymore. So
it's not fun.
So like you had this divide, like if you went into a mission on public where it's just like, oh, are they going to try to force this build? Or like, are we going to do something that's kind of less effective, but fun? And it's like, that thing was like, hey, just being able to put 2 things down at the start of the mission and then just stand there is so solved. How is that fun? Like I did that was not a enjoyable experience. It's one of those things where people wanted that was the thing. It's like, that could have been a balanced thing that could have been improved in Save the World, and it never happened. And it was one of the things that got constant feedback. And it was just like, you know what? It definitely got heard. It just never got solved. Right. It's kind of plan for when your feedback just never gets solved.
Well, Isher, I love your perspective, man. I think like it's a good refresher to hear. Play games and have fun, and wherever you're having fun, great, and if you need a break, take a break. I love that. I think that's a message we need to hear more of. Is there any last words, last thoughts, last things that you would like to say before we wrap everything up?
Yeah, it feels like we were spending a bit of time on like, talking about kind of the frustrations of Save the World. I honestly I enjoyed my time with Save the World. I would say if you're interested in playing Save the World, pick it up. The sad thing is it's a multiplayer game, but I honestly think the best experience is never go into a game with a player you don't already know. Mm-hmm. The multiplayer experience is so terribly broken where some missions can simply be halted by another player that doesn't want you to be able to progress, and they can try to like hijack it to make you trade. That still happens. That's never been fixed. So
bad actors.
There's a lot of fun and unique to this game. Like I honestly think like if you've never played it, I could recommend it. Just don't turn on multiplayer unless it's with a person you like and is going to be is going to kind of play along with how you want to play. Whether it's doing broken stuff or not. That it's a fun mode, and that kind of goes to the thing is like, I guess like why part of the thing that I wanted to say today is like, just like try to have fun with your experiences. If you feel burnt out on stuff, like it's you don't have to keep on doing the the same grind, right? Just try to make the objective to have fun rather than sticking to the thing that's always been what feels like your thing.
That's great. PM, last words.
I'm still not going to buy Save the World. just full disclosure. It's just because fair.
I'm not. It should have gone free to play.
Yeah, I think Save the World at this point needs to be free to play. I don't know if it is or not, but it just needs to. Epic, you have enough money to fund it. Just go ahead and do it. It's totally fine.
That is the weird thing. It's like there's no reason to not not
do it. We did talk about it. It would piss off.
Yeah, it would. And then that's the thing is right. They're still occasionally putting in those bundles, right? So like anybody that just bought it for $15, like unless you want to dump X amount of V-Bucks in everybody's account that has it, you're probably going to be upsetting people.
Yeah. You either rip the Band-Aid off or you just leave it alone. So it's totally on them.
It just feels like one of those things where they're just like the stick poking meme, do something.
Yeah. Right. So people were recommending ripping the Band-Aid off, 2 years ago, right? So like if they didn't do it then, like it's so much worse now. It's like they can't, right? Like, or can they? I don't know. Is this a sunk cost thing?
Or again? They do because everybody's gone now and they won't know. They're like, okay, I think they're gone.
Yeah.
Go.
They've all left.
They'll never know.
They're all playing Hearthstone.
Well, thank you so much, Isher, for being on the Unvaulted podcast. I really appreciate your perspective on Save the World. And of course, a huge special thank you to our listeners. Feel free to connect with us on the Unvaulted Pod, at the Unvaulted Pod, or at the Squatting Dog, or at It's PM, or at Isherwood Is that your Twitter?
Hold on. I know what my Twitter is. It's kind of Twitter. It is Twitter. Yeah. Isherwood Games on Twitter.
Isherwood Games.
Yeah.
Be sure to check us all out there on Twitter, and also consider checking out Isherwood on Twitch. Until next time, I'm Squatting Dog. We'll see you later, nerds.